Welcome back to Brave the Hang. Today's conversation is not just about what happened on one night in history, it's about what happens after. Many of you are familiar with Mark Geist, known to many as Mark Oz Geist, and the events of the September 2012 Benghazi attack, a night that claimed the lives of Ambassadors Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, and Glenn Doherty, and forever changed the lives of those who survived. Mark was on the night, risking everything to protect others. A Marine, a law enforcement officer, and a private security contractor, he is credited with helping save more than 25 lives. But what happened after that night is a story we don't hear nearly enough. Because when Mark came home, severely injured, carrying both visible and invisible bullets, he faced a different kind of one without a bound, one filled with uncertainty, tape, very little support for men in his line of work. And that's what led him to create a Warriors Project, a foundation of lived experience dedicated to supporting private security contractors and their families who often return home without the resources or recognition afforded to traditional military veterans. But today we're also telling the other side of the story, because sitting beside him is his wife, Krystal. On that same night, while Mark was fighting for his life in Benghazi, Krystal was at home, living every second of the unknown. And when he came back, changed, her role became something else entirely. She became the rock, the caregiver, the quiet strength holding everything together. Even in the moments when she broke down in private, she kept showing up. And through her work with her warrior heart, she has now created space for women just like her. Women who have carried the emotional weight of trauma, often silently, often unseen. This is a conversation about service, about sacrifice, about love that endures through change, and about two people who chose not just to survive, but to turn their pain into purpose. Today, we honor both warriors, the one who went into battle and the one who made sure they all made it home. Welcome, Mark and Krystal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, Scott, talk a little bit about what your experience was with watching the movie and any questions you might have for Mark to get us started.
Oh boy.
We have your book, Mark, 13.
We have the book as well.
I've been reading it as fast as I can to prepare. So if anybody wants to learn more about the story, you can either buy the book, 13 hours, or
Yes.
watch the movie, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or both.
Or both,
both.
even better, do both.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend reading the book first. There's, like all things, are so much more detail, and we had a fantastic writer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll get back to you. But one of the things I loved about the book after watching the movie was that it does go into greater detail. And I was unfamiliar with a lot of the history of Libya and that whole region. So to get some of that backstory in the very beginning was so helpful. And also to get some of the character profiles of the people that served. That was great. Yeah. So Mark, before Benghazi, your life was already defined by service, from the Marines to law enforcement to private security. What drove you to keep stepping into roles that required that level of risk?
I'm not really sure. I think it's just what I was made to do. My grandfather was my hero growing up. He was a World War II veteran. He was a tank commander in World War II, and I didn't know his whole story or a lot of his story until after he passed away. I was the only grandchild that served in the military, and so he gave me his shadow box when he passed away. And when I started looking at his medals and things like that, he retired out as a major in the Army as a tank commander. He had he had a Silver Star ribbon, but he also had 2 oak leaf clusters on it, which means that he had 3 silver stars, and he had 3 bronze stars. And he also had the North Africa Campaign Medal, which means he was in Africa with Patton, most likely, in the early 40s. And then he also had the German Occupation Medal, where which means that he stayed all the way through 45 and was part of the occupation of Germany after the end of the war.
Wow. And you didn't know any of this until after he passed?
Yeah, yeah, he never talked about anything.
Wow.
Um,
It's a different generation, right? Everything
yeah,
was
yeah, definitely
private.
that generation that just you didn't talk about it, you didn't worry about it, you didn't become a victim, you just kept going with life.
Yeah. For our listeners who are not familiar with your story in 13 hours and what happened on that night in history, would you mind taking us back and letting our listeners kind of know, give them a little history lesson as to why you were there and what your role was?
Well, we were there because in 2011, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton chose to had made the decision along with Barack Obama to oust Gaddafi and wanted to put in somebody else to run that country. And I think a lot of it had to do with oil and had to do with terrorists as well, because in Benghazi there was a lot of terrorist camps that were there being training foreign fighters to come in to later be sent into Iraq and Afghanistan to kill Americans. So what happened is under Bush, President Bush initially, if we go back and look in time, during that time, Gaddafi was trying to put North Africa, especially Libya, take it off the dollar and trade oil under their currency. He was also developing chemical weapons and nuclear weapons. So President Bush, basically, after we hanged Saddam, kind of sent a little bird over to tell Gaddafi, if you don't quit doing this stuff and don't get rid of those terrorist camps, you're going to be next. Well, Gaddafi did what he was a preservationist, he wanted to stay alive. And so he started attacking those camps, pushing them out, and then also settling some probably historic wrongs to each other, because Libya, like a lot of the countries in Africa, are split up not by the borders that we put on them, or at least England and Europe put on them. Is they are tribal, and Eastern Libya is different tribe than Western Libya, and so they started fighting, and that's where Gaddafi ended up surrounding Benghazi, and that's when Hillary Clinton and President Obama made the decision to form a coalition with France and Germany and Italy, and go after Gaddafi for hoping to stop the death of all the people in Benghazi. And so a year later, that's kind of, we were dealing with the after effects of all of that, all of the chaos that comes after you get rid of a dictator.
And you were part of a special forces team that was there to protect the CIA. Is that correct?
I was actually a part of the CIA.
Okay.
Because we weren't active duty, we were contractors. So I was contracted by the CIA directly to protect their case officers, and basically my job was to make sure the spies came home.
Okay. And on that night in history, the compound came under attack, right?
Yeah, well, it started, we had met with the ambassador. He came over to our place the night before. We'd offer him, because 9/11, you never know in the Middle East what's going to happen with 9/11. So we offered to have him and his 5 team members, which was his security guys, him and Sean Smith, and there was 5 security guys, to come over and stay at our compound, because their compound was about 8 acres, and they had a few local nationals that helped, but there's no way to secure 8 acres with 5 security guys. Our compound, the CIA compound, was about the size of a football field. We had plenty of ammo. I mean, we'd gotten a shipment of ammo in. I think we had over 60,000 rounds. I always tell people, there was 3 Marines, 2 Navy SEALs, and an Army Ranger there. And, you give us that much ammo, we're going to take care of business and make sure that everyone comes home. But that's kind of what started the night. Is that next day, Things were quiet. Nothing really indicated that there was any problems that night, or few or expected problems. So one of the female case officers, me and her, ended up going out in town because we had to meet with a Libyan family to gather up some intel. And we were having dinner with them when I got a call on the radio from Tyrone Woods, our team leader, that said, "Hey, Oz, you need to get back to the annex and just stay away from the consulate." So me and that female case officer, we got loaded up, headed west down the coast, because we could have drove straight through, but we'd have went right by the consulate, and that's where everything was going on. So we drove down the coastline, cut back through the desert, and then come back in from a back way that we knew of, that we could get back over to the annex.
Okay. Yeah, that was incredible. So when you think about Benghazi today, do you think of it as one defining moment or part of a much larger story of service and sacrifice?
I think it's a much larger story, because it's, what happened there. I mean, because I was injured pretty bad. I had about 25 holes in me, and my left arm was about blown off. Um, and actually, on the plane from Tripoli, on the evening of the 12th, on the plane from Tripoli to Germany, and I didn't know it at the time until probably about 5, 6 years ago. I was reading my medical reports, and it said that I had to be intubated and resuscitated. So I died on the plane, and they brought me back. But it's all of that that really just kind of put me in a place to make a difference in others' lives again in a different way.
It's incredible. Well, without revisiting more trauma, what do you want people to truly understand about that night and the men who were there beside you?
Well,
Men
I
and,
think,
men and women, I guess, right?
yeah, yeah. There's, what people need to understand is there's approximately 172 diplomatic facilities around the world, where we have active duty military, we have civilian employees, we have contractors, there's State Department personnel, US USAID, what's left of them, if any. There's a lot of Americans that are doing things for America in all of these diplomatic facilities. And, a lot of times they're in countries that are not friendly. Um, we see what's going on with everything right now with Iran and even Iraq. They're attacking our embassies and consulates in Iraq. And, so Americans are always in somewhere. There are Americans who are in danger of some sort that could end up like another Benghazi. And, what really should have happened was in Benghazi was the administration should have sent some help. Um, then they turned it into a lie about there was nothing that could get there in time. And it's like, well, how do you know what time it was going to be over? There's in time.
Right.
We had aircraft in Italy that could have got there in 3 to 4 hours. And it wouldn't have taken nothing more than an F-15 flying 500 feet off the deck going 800 miles an hour. That would have scared everybody in that town, and they would have all went to take cover, because they saw what our air capabilities did when Gaddafi was attacking Benghazi. And it was our air assets that really did the majority of the destruction of Gaddafi's people back in 2011.
So why do you think they didn't send help?
There's a lot of rumors out there. Some people, I don't think it was nefarious. I don't think it was really, I think it was a poor leadership and people trying to control the narrative from 10,000 miles, 12,000 miles away. It's easy to be able to sit there and look on the screen of any video or anything that's coming in from drones or something like that, and then trying to make decisions. And again, the night was pretty chaotic because they attacked the consulate. 5 of our guys went over, were able to push off the 40 armed individuals that had taken over the consulate, retrieve the Sean Smith's body, repelled 2 more counterattacks on the consulate, made it back to the annex, and then all of a sudden it was quiet. we couldn't find the ambassador at that time. What we did find out is that he was at the hospital, but for the most part, it quieted down. So they didn't want to send in a bunch of Marines and cause more chaos. I'm guessing is probably what their thinking was. And so instead of doing that, a team from Tripoli, our sister team that does the same job up in Tripoli, flew down, landed at the airport in Benghazi, and then tried to find a way to get to us. And that took them about 4 or 5 hours to be able to do that. And during that time, we were able to send an asset, a local national that worked with us over, and confirm that the ambassador was at the hospital and that the ambassador was deceased. And so I think that ebb and flow of the battle all the way until 5 o'clock, 5:15 in the morning is what really threw off the leadership. Instead of just offering us and giving us whatever we wanted and then turning it back as we don't need it, but letting us make that decision on the ground. And that's so much more important, that good leadership allows the people that are there to make those decisions. Their job at that point is to provide them with whatever assets they can to help let them save the lives of the people that they're tasked with doing.
Well, speaking of saving lives, you've been credited with saving over 25 lives. How do you carry that alongside the loss of those who didn't make it?
Most of it has to do with my faith. I mean, because people have asked me, 3 of the mortars landed within about 17 feet of me, and they were 80 millimeter mortars. They have a kill radius of 131 feet. So it means if you're within that 131 feet of one of them, you have about a 97% chance of dying. I was within 17 feet of 3 of them. And on the first one that hit, the blast went through me, tore up my arm, went through me, and killed Ty on the other side of me. So I could fall into, survivor's guilt or why me, but, my faith in the Lord is that, what his will will be done. And, he must have something greater for me to do or something. I'm not sure what, and I always ask about it, but, I think that's what really helped me get through what all of that night and get through all of the injuries and everything afterwards as well.
That's fantastic. And Krystal, we're going to shift to you. Take us back to that night for you. What do you remember feeling as everything was unfolding?
Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday. So the night that it happened for me, it was September 11th because of the time difference. It was actually September. So the night before, when things were happening, it was about 9 p.m. and I just had this call, this just overwhelming call to just pray, just to pray. I didn't know what it was. I thought, it was September 11th. Yeah, that's right. And I just was like, well, it's over. Everything's good. You get used to, I think, as a spouse, you get used to the September 11th. When September 11th comes around, you get a little nervous. And it was the end of day, September 11th. It's 9 p.m. And I just had this overwhelming call to pray. And I was just like, okay, everything's done, everything's fine, but okay. I just got down and just prayed. I prayed for our troops. I prayed for Mark and the guys that were where they were, and just prayed. And at this time, I didn't know anything was going on. I had no idea. We were just settling in the night, getting dinner dishes done, putting the baby down, and I woke up the next morning. Going back to being a spouse, you learn not to watch the news or listen to anything because you hear of car bombs or things, especially at the time, and my first thought would be, could that be him? And so I just stayed away from any and all news I could possibly avoid. And the next morning, it was going to be a great morning. It was September 12th, and my oldest daughter had a half a day at school, and we're just going to have a girls' day. And I took her to school, and I came home, and the baby was still in her car seat. And I thought, what harm is it? I'm going to turn on the TV. And at the bottom of the screen was you know, 4 Americans killed, 2 still unaccounted for. And it was the CIA annex in Benghazi. And I was just like, oh, that just can't be right. And so I was just flipping through the channels thinking, just in my head, this couldn't happen. It just didn't make sense. And every station had the same thing. And so I tried calling some of Mark's friends that I knew were home that may have some insight. I tried calling the State Department, and got nothing. I got nothing. And so I just I just kind of went to my room and just screamed, and was just, I didn't want to believe it. I still had a hope. I told myself, there's 2 unaccounted for. We don't know it's him, but I knew if it was, he'd find his way back to me. And I just knew that I would just fail him, and I didn't. So I had hope, and I held on to that. And I thought, boy, how am I gonna tell my daughter? I have to go pick her up, and how am I gonna tell his mom? Because we had told her that he was in DC working there, in the office. And so I thought, oh, I have lied to this woman, and I love this woman. How am I going to tell her now this? And I went and picked up my daughter and from school, and I just told her, we don't know yet anything, but here's where we're at. So we came home, and still nothing. I tried calling everybody that I could think of, and I didn't do anything. And so we just waited. I called my mom, and at the time, because he worked for who he worked for, weren't allowed to talk about that, where he worked, who he worked for. And so I called my mom, and she said, it's not him. Like, look at who it is. It's CIA. And I'm like, no, Mom, he's in Benghazi. And I was trying to explain to her, and so she immediately just stopped what she was doing and came to my house and helped with the girls, because I just kind of sat on the couch feeling truly just like a zombie, and just sitting there and just thinking so many different things going through my head, still not giving up hope. And then finally, about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I got a call from a hospital, and the other voice on the line was his nurse, and said, hey, I have Mark here. We're getting him settled. He had just gone through surgery, I believe. We're getting him settled, and once we get him, settled in, we'll have him call you. And I just remember taking a breath, like it was the first breath that I had all day long, and just thinking, thank God, he's alive. Wasn't concerned about injuries. I was just thankful that he was alive and I'd get to hear his voice. So about an hour, it was probably about an hour later, Mark called me, and so I got to talk to him, which was just such a huge relief. And he said, well, but the thing is you got to know, I broke my arm. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Who cares? So I don't care if all your limbs are broken or missing. Like, you're home, and you're not home. You're safe. You're alive. And so in my mind, I was thinking he just broke his arm. Everything's good. And then it took about a week. We flew out to see him. Me and the girls. We flew out to see him, and we were picked up by somebody from the agency, and they took us to his hospital. And before I go in his room, he stopped me and he said, I want you to just take a moment. Before you walk in that room, I want you to take a moment because I want you to prepare yourself. And I thought, I've got a broken arm. What's the problem? And so I thought for a moment, what could it be? What could it be? Because he's always been good about, I don't want to say lying because he's not a liar. He's always been good about trying to make me feel comfortable. For instance, before he left to go to Benghazi, I was kind of used to him going to Iraq or Pakistan, where everybody in the country was trying to kill him. I got comfortable with that, but this new country, I wasn't so comfortable with. For some reason, I just had a bad feeling. But he pulled up Benghazi, these beautiful shorelines, and told me it's like a resort town. It's beautiful. There's nothing to worry about. Then I'm like, CIA don't send you to resort towns. But it was important for him to believe that I believed that he was safe and everything was okay, even though he was getting his affair in order and all the things, making me believe he's going to like the Reds or something. So he was always good about trying to protect my feelings and my heart, and even though I knew better. And so I thought, could this be one of those times? And I walk into his hospital room, and there he is. His arm just split open, like just his stomach was all wrapped up. I mean, just surgery after surgery. He had a cut on his neck, and it was more like a gash. He had told me he had scratched his neck. And I thought, how is your head still attached to this big old gash? So I probably threatened to kill him.
Probably.
At that point, because he lied to me. But I just crawled up in his bed with him.
Beautiful. And I'm struck by the fact that it's 14 years later and it still carries so much emotion for both of you. It's beautiful to watch, actually. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that. It was beautiful. So you've shared that your life changed forever in that moment. When did you realize this is going to be a long road ahead?
Honestly, I didn't even think about it until the girls and I had to fly home about a week later, and we had to leave Mark behind. He still had a lot of healing to do, and which was very hard on all of us. But we had to go home. Kiddo had school, and so we come home, and Mark was we were trying to get him back to Colorado and get him into some facility for. And I remember talking to my mom one evening, and it's like, Mark gets to come home in a couple days. This was a month later. And I said, Mark gets to come home in a couple days and it'll be really good. We've got him set up with the Air Force Academy to take over some of his care. And my mom goes, and she wasn't trying to be mean, but she was trying to prepare me. And she said, well, just be prepared for what happens next, because it's not going to be the same. And I thought, what in the world, what in the world are you talking about? He's coming home. Like, that's all I could think of. And then after he come home, I realized he was a different person. He was a different person entirely. And I told him, I said, it's like you died over there because you've changed. And he looked at me and he said, what in the world would make you think I would be the same after that? And I was just like, how naive I was to think that my husband would just come home just the way he was. And at that moment, I just prayed and I just asked God, help me to know this person, help me to love this new man, and help me to just help him. And he did.
You keep saying that like every week.
I have to pray. To pray a lot. No. You're a handful. Just saying.
Yeah, aren't they all? I've got my own handful right next to me.
And and
My point today.
I just told myself at that point when is giving up isn't an option, and I try to tell other spouses, women who have warriors for husbands is um, he's he's a warrior indeed, but God made him that way, and God put you in the place, for that purpose and for that time, and to be that rock and to help your family and help um, just to help them heal, because I think if they have a safe, stable, secure place to come back to, and they know that you're there, it does wonders for their healing. They can focus on healing, and so I think there's definitely something to that. I think there's something in that for your kiddos as well, and just being that strength and that rock and that advocate for your family it's biblical, and it's huge, and it's a very important job.
Well said. Mark, what was it like for you to return home and realize that healing wasn't going to be simple or linear?
Um, I think it was rough. But because I knew I had to try to be strong for the family and things like that, and I was on quite a bit of medicine. Um, I think I was on like 800 milligrams of oxy a day. Um, I was on like 1,500 or I think no 1,200 milligrams of Neurontin, which is a nerve pain, and a bunch of other stuff. And but and that was probably I think the whole because it was probably almost a year that I was on that kind of medicine, and going back and forth to get more surgeries and physical therapy, which lasted about a year and a half, till I could get my hand back to where it's at now. But it was a struggle, and I think the biggest thing is I went from making really good money to making almost nothing. And that's what really, because as private military contractors, you don't have the same benefits that you have in the military. We're a private entity. You're a business person. Basically, it's like they hire you up to do this, and when you're caught, like my pay stopped the day I left Libya because I only got paid when my feet were in Libya. So I went from making almost 30 grand a month to making $5,000 a month on workman's comp, and that was probably the biggest struggle because it's going through that process trying to get workman's comp going, and then when I can remember the day because you got to file paper with Department of Labor, and then they send it, and because you're on a classified program, there's only one insurance company that would have that contract. Um, and this lady called me up and said, hey, this is who we are. And uh, I got your paperwork. So what's wrong with you? And that's kind of how she said it. And I'm like, oh, well, not too much. I just got blown up 3 times, had about 26 holes in me. My arm's about hanging off. But other than that, life's pretty good. And she says, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, you're not. Why would you even answer the phone like that? Why would you talk to somebody like that? Because the reason you're calling somebody is because they're hurt and they can't go back to work. And I think she had this mentality of people trying to take advantage of workman's comp, and so that's kind of that was a lot of the stuff that I thought about, and just trying to figure out how now what am I going to do next to take care of my family, because that Christmas. We really didn't have, we were really struggling money wise. We didn't have anything for the kids for Christmas. We couldn't afford it. But luckily, I had to go back to DC for another surgery. And when I got back there, I had went back to the office, and a group of people had taken up taken up a tithe, and they handed me an envelope that I don't know, had quite a bit of money in it. And that was kind of what really inspired us to take Shadow Warriors and start it, because we didn't want to see anybody else have to kind of go through that, where they had to worry about whether or not they were going to keep their house, or whether they could make the car payment or keep the gas on. And that was what really started us heading down the road of having a nonprofit.
So tell me, now that you brought it up, what does Shadow Warriors do? What does that project do exactly?
First and foremost, we help those that get killed or injured overseas that are private military contractors or private security contractors, because most people don't realize there's a couple things most people don't realize. Is one is private contractors have been a part of every war that we've had since the Revolutionary War. The first contractor that was ever there was General Lafayette, who came over and was paid by George Washington to train the troops. That's basically a private military contractor. Every war since then has had it, but the war on terror kind of blew it up because there was more contractors working than there ever had been in any other war before. But what the other thing most people don't understand is that from 2001 to roughly 2015, there was over 5,000 contractors killed and 30,000 injured in the war on terror. And there was as many contractors killed as there was military killed as well. So, and they don't have that. So that's what really kind of pushed us to want to take care of our own.
So the Shadow Warriors project provides for families and injured contractors financially and in other ways, or mostly just financially?
Financially, emotionally, and spiritually.
Okay.
And Krystal's the one who, I got to give it to her. She's the one who usually takes the phone calls and talks to them, whether it's 4 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning. She's the one that answers the phone and talks them back off a ledge if they're suicidal. She's the one, giving them a care plan, helping the spouses, and doing everything that needs to be done to help them get to the next day.
And if our listeners want to help in some way or need help, how do they find you?
The best place is go to shadowwarriorsproject.com. .org. And see, that's why she's here.
Shadowwarriorsproject.org.
Yeah,
Okay.
.org. And you can reach us there and look through the different programs we have. If you want to donate, that is always wonderful. We love those that can help help these people. Luckily, we're not helping as many of the contractors, but we're probably helping more of the spouses now, because what we've seen both in the military, the veterans, and as contractors, is spousal suicide is almost as high as it is for veteran suicide. They have a whole separate, separate classification in my mind of PTSD, because, everybody thinks you have to see what trauma is, it has to be a traumatic event. Well, every time I left was a traumatic event for Krystal and my oldest daughter. Out of 9 years of contract, and I deployed 22 times, I was gone for 7 years total, but it was in increments of, I'd go away for 2 or 3 months, come home for a month, go back for 3 months, come back. So every time that I left, and just like with our veterans and our active duty now, every time they would leave, there's some trauma that happens to the family. And luckily our spouses, they're strong. There is the heroes that are behind us, and they step up and take care of the family, take care of the home, take care of the bills, and do everything that we would do, or probably everything that they would do, plus all of our stuff when we're gone.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Krystal, I want to shift back to you, because you describe yourself as being the foundation for your family, but you also break down in private. Why do so many women feel like they have to carry that burden silently?
I don't really know why. I think it's just one of those things. I don't want to add. I don't want to add to my husband's burden. I don't want to add like I'm strong enough. I can take this. I don't want to break down in front of my children because I want to be that strength. Um,
Mm.
and I don't think there's even a thought to it. I think you just do it. I think you just pull up your big girl panties and you just do it. You just go for it. And that's just, I think that's how God made us. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. We've had a lot of warrior wives leave their husbands because they say they didn't sign up for such a thing, and they leave, and that breaks my heart because I think it's a calling. I think it's just one of the greatest acts of love that you can do is to care for another person, no matter how stubborn they may be. But and there's blessing in it, and
I'm going to knock her off here.
Yeah.
Mark, you're done.
Go over.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about.
Talking to me.
Stubborn
And that's why with her warrior heart is I really want to minister to the wives and let them know that you have the strength, you have what it takes to go through this, to do this, to be what you need to be for your family. We give them tools, we educate them on PTSD, because much like myself and like Mark just said, is you find out later that you do have PTSD as well. And that was one of the things. I think we're friends with Victor Marks and his wife, and we were at a church service with them, and he was talking about PTSD and some of the symptoms, and I was just like, oh no, I have it. I have this. This is me. And I think truly, if you can educate the spouse, even the warrior, on PTSD and give them tools to help. I think you can help manage it. I think you can help keep the family together, because I think there's so much to it, and you've just truly got to understand yourself, the disorder, and how to care for yourself and your spouse, and why they're exhibiting some of the behavior that they do. It's not always pleasant. It's not always nice, but there's a reason, and you can, and it's another tool to help them. And so that's why we have Her Warrior Heart retreats is also to bring these ladies in and to give them a space where they can say, I just want to be able to just speak freely, just to let go, and build that network and community of other like-minded ladies who've gone through, similar things, and build each other up.
And you have a retreat coming up in May, correct?
June 12th through the 16th.
Okay. And if people want to learn more about that, how will they find out about that?
So they can go to krystalgeist.com, and it's a retreat, but it's definitely through Shadow Warriors Project. But it's for veteran first responder spouses, or significant others, caregivers, basically. And they can go there. They can sign up. They can fill out an application, or even donate if they want to sponsor a woman or a retreat.
And Krystal, your name's K, right?
Yep.
So Krystal with a K, and then Geist is GEIST.com. Okay. So I want you to tell us a little bit more about what happens at the retreat rather. What happens when these women finally feel safe enough to let their guard down?
So we like I said, we do education. We have workshops, such as love stories, for example, and we ask them to tell their story, their love story. It's not always the sweet, heart-filled eyes that you would think of when you tell your love story. Sometimes there's a lot of pain in that story. And so what we want to do with that story is we want to remind you, and we want you to essentially remember why you chose this man in the first place. Because take it back to the basics. Why did you choose this man? And we want to remind them, and just kind of maybe even rekindle that flame, and And so we do specific workshops, crafts, things like that, and fun activities. We do a lot of fun activities, things that you might challenge yourself, things that you might go, I would never do that outside of this retreat. I would be too afraid. And I have to challenge myself too. But it's just a way to push them to see what they're capable of. They can do hard things. You're capable of doing hard things. And also your sisters beside you are cheering you on and supporting you. And so I think, it's just a well-rounded, these ladies can talk. They can talk about whatever they want to talk about. We do have some workshops like love stories that are guided, but they're free to say whatever they want. If they want to vent, they're in a safe space. It's very, it's faith-based. And so, you don't have to be a Christian or any religion to come. There's no requirement. But know that you will hear the name Jesus many times, and you will be prayed for, and you will be loved on. And essentially that's what it's about, because I don't believe that if you have PTSD or any circumstance where you're struggling, you're not going to heal without a little Jesus in your life.
Well, we're going to speak a little bit about love. And Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot first. What does it mean to you to have someone who refused to give up on you, even in your hardest moments?
I mean, it's like it's like very similar to the way you depend on each other when you're in combat. Krystal's my battle buddy, and I know that she's going to be there. I know that she's going to take care of me. I know that she's got my six, and I know she knows I've got hers, and that no matter what we face, the good, the bad, the ugly, that as long as we are together, that it's going to work out. In the Navy SEALs, they have this saying. How does that go?
The only easy day was yesterday.
No, I bring it up and then I can't even remember it. That's part of the getting blown up too many times. But two is one and one is none. And what that means is together, two people, you're one. You're a solid group. But by yourself, you're none. And so together we can do anything. We can overcome anything. And that's really what it's all about, is understanding that and believing in that and praying for each other and understanding we all have our good days. We have our bad days. But what's most important is that we go through them together.
Krystal, your turn. You said you had to learn to love a new version of your husband. What did that journey teach you about love?
Devotion. That love is more than just the heart-filled eyes or the it's about being devoted to somebody and the vows that you take when you get married, that this is what it is. Like Mark said, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, for better or for worse. And I think it's taught me a lot about growth in myself and seeing what I'm capable of, but also that it's about, I guess, your soul. It's not about the person. It's about just being devoted to your vows and just being here no matter what.
Great answer. All right, final reflection. If someone listening is in the middle of their own battle, visible or invisible, what would you want them to know today? Either one of you can take it.
What I would want them to know is this is just a season. It's just a season. God tells us we're going to have hard times, but he tells us that he's going to go through it with us and that he'll be there on the other side. And I just imagine Jesus on the other, walking alongside me, but on the other side also cheering me on. And it's rewarding to get to that other side. If you can walk through that fire, there's just a greater thing that awaits, a deeper love, a deeper connection, deeper trust. And, and I think just have faith, just put everything into the Lord, and just give it to him, and trust him, and don't give up. That's what I would say.
Mark, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, like she said, I think it's about, fear and faith can't operate in the same space. So if you have faith, there's no, that overcomes the fear, and know that, again, together you're going to get through it. And whatever you're going through, you're never going through it alone. It's just a matter of if you're going to make that reach out to Christ and to bring him into it, because if he is in your life, what you're going through is just preparing you for something greater that he has intended for you. And just like with all that I've been through, I wouldn't be here talking to you about Christ. I wouldn't necessarily be doing what I've done since then, which is far more important than anything I've done before, because now it's about talking about Christ. It's about changing people's lives. And who would have thought, it's going to be that I would get blown up 3 times, die on the airplane, come back, and, it's like, okay, Lord, you got my attention. What do you want me to do?
Yeah. You're doing a lot.
That would do it.
I know, right? You're doing a
Okay.
lot. And after everything, what does strength mean to you now?
I think strength is, it kind of goes back to, one, having Christ in your life, and having the right person in your life. And that means, you're the right wife, the right spouse, making sure you have the right friends, because there's a lot of people out there that'll say you're friends, but are they really friends? Are they going to be there to, at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're having trouble and you call and you need some help? Are they going to answer the phone? How many of them do you have? I can probably count them on one hand. That kind of friend. Most people are acquaintances. Some really good acquaintances and some not. But having those people around you that will also, call you out on when you're messing up. And I've got a couple. Krystal, of course, she'll never miss a chance to correct me. But I've got 2 friends. One of them, and I know when I call him, he's gonna say something, because, especially with the notoriety and everything that's came with Benghazi and all that, it's easy to start thinking that you're something, that you're something important, and you're not. You're just another person. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy that did a job, and that's all it was. And and if I think I am, or my buddy thinks I'm getting that way, he'll do a course correction on me real quick. And I like having those people, because they ground you and they keep you focused on what really matters. And it is that core group, and that's what gives us strength, is having that.
I also want to answer that. I think for me, I think strength means that you've had to go through something difficult, because I don't think you understand the strength that you have, or you even develop it, until you go through something like a fire that refined you. I think that's when you realize how strong you really are and what you really are capable of, is when you can walk through a fire and come out and go, I did okay. I'm still here. And the next thing that comes along, you've developed that strength and that toughness. That's what strength means to me.
And I always remind myself, God doesn't give us more than we can handle.
Yep.
Right. I want to bring you into the conversation. Is there anything you want to add? Any questions you'd like to ask before we say goodbye?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Well, first, I want to thank you, Mark, for your service while active duty and then post. Your story is just surreal and admirable and motivational as well. So thank you very much. I think it's important for appreciate you telling your story today, because I think it's important for especially young people today to understand that there are a lot of bad people in the world, whether it's Iran or Colombia or Benghazi or Iraq. And so there are a lot of people around the world protecting us every day. And I think a lot of days we don't think about that, or most people probably don't think about that, and they should.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. One very important question.
Go ahead.
How did you get your nickname?
Now,
Probably get it all the time. So
I do. But it's interesting because,
that's
you
a good.
know, when I was in the military, you never had an individual call sign. In the Marine Corps at that time, the only people that had call signs were pilots. You know, they had their own call sign, but it wasn't a thing that you did. It was if we had call signs given to us, it was as a unit, so you could identify what unit is in what location or who's talking on the radio based
Okay.
on that. So when I first got over to Iraq in 2000, I think it was January of 2004. I got there and the guys come up, and most of them I was probably five years older than most of them. I hadn't been in the military since '96, and so it's been 9 years since I've been in the military. These guys were all guys that were in the military. They probably were in the invasion of Iraq, and so they come up and they're like, "So what's your call sign?" And I'm like, "What do you mean call sign?" And they're like, "Well, what do we call you?" I'm like, "Mark." And they're like, "No, you got to have a call sign." I'm like, I just left a job making, I don't know, $65,000 a year, and now you're paying me $800 a day. You call me whatever you want. I don't care. And they're like, "Well, you don't want us to call you, pick your call sign." I'm like I said, call me whatever you want. Well, it took them 3 or 4 days, and I finally was like, "So what are you guys gonna? What's my call sign?" They're like, "Polter," for poltergeist. And I'm like, "It took you guys 3 days to decide that?" And so I went for the next year, 2 years. I was Polter, and then I changed contracts. I was on another job, and they it went to they changed it from Polter because there was a guy there that was named Potter, and Potter and Polter over the radio was too close, so they called me Wizard of Oz, and I have no idea where they came up with that. They just did, and then I traded contracts again, and the next one there was a guy there that was Wizard, so it ended up just being Oz.
Just pause.
All right.
I know that was an interesting story, right?
Yeah.
Sequence of nicknames. I like that.
Yes.
All right. Well, as we say goodbye today, what stays with me after this conversation is the reminder that some of the greatest strength we will ever witness doesn't happen in front of the world. It happens quietly in hospital rooms, in moments of uncertainty, in the decision to stay, to fight, to love, even when everything has changed. To Mark Geist, thank you for your courage, your service, and for continuing to fight for others through the Shadow Warriors Project. And to Krystal Geist, thank you for reminding us that behind so many warriors are women carrying a weight the world rarely sees. Through her warrior heart, you are reminding them that they are not alone and that their strength matters too. If this conversation moved you, let it move you to reach out, to check in, to see someone who may be carrying more than you realize. Because sometimes the strongest people in the room are the ones no one is looking at, and they deserve to be seen. So until next time, make the moment matter, reach out to someone you've been thinking about, and if no one has told you lately, you're not alone, you are seen, and you are deeply valued. Take care of yourself and take care of someone else. Thank you, Krystal and Mark, for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and God bless.
God
God
bless you.
bless. Bye.
Bye.